Well, we're going to have a video played before I can call Simon to have the floor.
Quando a internet surgiu, revolucionou a forma como nos comunicamos e interagimos uns com os outros. Além dela, muitas novas tecnologias foram criadas para melhorar a nossa vida. E hoje em dia,
many new technologies were created to innovate our life, and they are present in our lives. There are mobile devices, computers, and several different gadgets that help us daily. But all these innovations, apart from making our day-to-day easier, can also bring about more significant changes for society. Technology can also help people to have education access to health, to energy, to food. Innovative tools may and can be used to improve the life of people on the planet. Every day, there are people thinking, creating new tools to enable these changes to take place. The idea to promote the world and make a better world through these tools, these innovative tools, is known as social good. Well, social good is the use of new tools and technologies for the social good. Well, it's the impulse to transform something virtual in a physical activism. We use it to call volunteers to participate in our actions, in our programs. So when you mobilize your network for a social purpose, with the construction of emergency houses, for instance, we do that with people that are extremely poor. Well, for me, it can be a public service that indeed places the human being at the center. It can be a social change. Well, to use not only technology, but the know-how that everybody knows on the behalf of something, of a project that has as a final purpose to help the community. Is how do you build collectively a community services that will guarantee the well-being of people and how they can participate in the construction of their own reality in their future. I apply social good in my good through a crowdsourcing platform so that many people can work and can participate in projects. We created this dynamic of one real, a new bottom that when you click it, something that you like, some other people's idea, and this click is worth R1 that helps this economic force work to make this thing possible. The idea of social good does not live on the online world. Technology impact and make it live and happen in the offline. We have to understand that for construction of social good, we have to have a lot more interaction, a lot more participation, less tapping on the back and more action. Well, I do not have to depend on a government or a big company to cause a social transformation that is effective. I depend more on people and collaborate with them. How can you do something for your city, for your country, for your world? Start getting to know more at socialgoodbrazil.org.br. Well, now it's time for us to introduce our international key speakers, and before that, I'd like to remind you that we have earphones for the simultaneous translation, and also that you can all ask questions, written questions that is, and deliver it to our receptionist so that it can later be read and addressed to our speakers. Simon, our special guest tonight, is Australian. He lives in the United States, and he has told us that he is in love with Florianopolis. Isn't that true, Simon? Simon is a reference in social media, in branding, social branding, and Lucia and I attended his lecture in the Social Good Summit, and we loved his book. The We First is one of the United States bestsellers. It's considered one of the best books of the year, and he says how us in a capitalist system can deal or can address social change and create sustainable changes. And tonight he's going to share with us some insights on his book and his ideas of the future of branding and social innovation. He's also going to talk about how social media impact all of us and which opportunities we have for social change. Simon has lectured in companies and NGOs and governments and companies such as Gucci, General Motors, Coca-Cola, and this is the first time that he is in Santa Catarina. He's been in Brazil once before, and we thank Simon a lot, and I hope that you all take a great advantage of this conversation with him, and do not forget to write down your questions.
Boa noite.
Boa noite, good night.
Thank you.
Muito obrigado.
Can I first say
Poderia eu, primeiramente,
congratulations to Fernanda and Lucia for making this possible, this incredible event. Can we put our hands together for them for making this happen? This is the beginning of something very, very important, and thank you for inviting me to Florianopolis. I'm Australian. I love the beach. I love the sun. You have 42 beaches. You have a surf culture. This is the tech center of Brazil. You have incubators, and you make really good coffee. I'm done. I called my wife last night in Los Angeles, and I said, honey, I'm not sure if I'm coming home. And she was cooking dinner, so she had the phone on speaker, and I heard my 10-year-old daughter say, Mummy, is Daddy not coming home? So I think I have some explaining to do when I get home. But also thank you for those in the room outside. I believe there's some people who are in a room outside, and also to everybody who's watching on live stream. And also, thanks to all of you in the room. There's so many young people. We could feel it as soon as we walked in the room. And you know how we know if you're young or not? You've got this light shining in your face from your laptop. I can just spot you everywhere. And the ones who are really young, they've got their smartphone and their computer out, so they've got two spotlights going like this. So I can see you. And you can always tell in a conference how, tech-savvy people are by the amount of light you see out in the audience. Now, I know that not everyone in this audience is convinced that perhaps social media is where they need to put their attention, especially if you're a big corporation. And I want to assure you, I'm not a tech guy. I'm an advertising guy. I don't know how to code. I don't know anything about the back end of computers. If you put me near a PC, I start to shake. I have no idea what's going on. And really, I started out in Australia as an advertising guy at Saatchi & Saatchi and DDB. Then I worked in London for a long time on brands like the BBC, The Guardian, Harrods, and Adidas. And then I went across to America, and I worked on Nike for 4.5 years at Wieden & Kennedy. And then I ended up running Motorola's business globally for Ogilvy. And then at the end of 2001, like most Australians, I'd gone all around the world trying to find out if something more exciting was going on somewhere else. And I found that I wasn't fulfilled. And so I left corporate life. And who here has seen the movie Pulp Fiction? Pulp Fiction? You know, the cleaner, the cleaner who gets rid of the dead bodies? For about the last 10 years, I've kind of been that guy for big companies. When they need their messaging fixed at the last minute, I come in like the cleaner and help them with that. But even with that sort of variety, I found about 4 years ago that I was no longer challenged by work. And it wasn't that I really wasn't challenged. I realized I wasn't finding enough meaning in my work. And I was literally walking around my house in the backyard in Los Angeles going, oh my God, is this it? Like, was I put here on this planet just to be an ad guy? And I wasn't fulfilled. And at the same time, I missed 5 phone calls during the night because I live in Los Angeles and my family live in Sydney. And those 5 phone calls were from my mother and my sister telling me to answer the phone because my father wanted to speak to me and he died before the last phone call. And he was calling to say goodbye. And so there was I at a loss personally with my career. And then amongst other things, when your parents pass away, you suddenly go, I'm it. Like, what am I doing here? What's the purpose of me being here? And it was at that time that I happened to read a speech that Bill Gates gave at the World Economic Forum, his creative capitalism speech, and that he later gave to the UN as well. And all it was just a transcript on the Gates Foundation site. And he said something very simple. He said, government and philanthropy can't fix the world on their own. We need the private sector to get involved. And that seems fairly logical to me. And I'd worked on global accounts and big pieces of business in the World Cup and the Olympics, and I was used to that sort of breadth of ambition. And so I thought I would try and answer that, and spent 3 years researching this social media, this Twitter, Facebook thing. Because also I had to provide for my family, and I didn't want to be irrelevant and get left behind by technology. And that's ultimately what led to this book. So you being here tonight, and you watching on live stream, and what Fernanda and Lucia have done by actually making a decision to make a contribution, that's all that needs to happen. That's how everything changes, when each of us individually commit to do something to drive positive change. That said, it's not going to be simple. And you know why these things always mess up? Because technology always wants to remind you who's in control. But McKinsey, the global management firm, they did a study with the Committee for the Encouragement of Corporate Philanthropy in 2011, 2012, and they came up with 4 different versions of the future. And you're responsible, all of us are, for which one of these come true. The first one is that corporations will respond to expectations for greater social responsibility, and government will allow them to do it. Fantastic. The second one is corporations try to adopt socially responsible practices, but customers don't trust them, so government and NGO pull away, and we end up with a split, bifurcated capitalism. The third, and it gets worse as you go down, you can tell, the third is companies refuse to work on global change, and so there's more government regulation and more customer distrust. And the fourth and final slash your risks alternative is society and corporations can't work together, and we just continue the downward spiral into economic disaster. And really, each of those is equally viable, and it's up to us, really, which one will be our future. But we all woke up to a simple fact in 2008, I think. What 2008 taught me, the global economic meltdown, was just how connected we are. What happens on Wall Street affects Main Street, affects Iceland, Greece, stock markets, in the Gulf states. It taught us that the internationalization of currencies mean that what happens here in the United States can affect someone's healthcare or homes or hopes on the other side of the world. And then you had things like the earthquake in Haiti and the floods in Pakistan. And you start to wake up to this fact that we're all in this together. And so this idea became very, very clear to me that prosperity is not the wealth of a few, but it's the well-being of many. Because brands cannot survive in societies that fail. And in America, I'll tell you, the middle class is really struggling. And tonight is a big decision. By the way, if anyone's looking at their smartphone, I forgive you. You're going to see who's going to win the election. You're all like checking the thing. If anyone finds like someone calls the election early, just shout out. It'll be absolutely fine. But prosperity is not the wealth of a few, it's the well-being of many. And so, technology. And so there's a few facts I want to share with you. This is not anecdotal. This is not my thinking. This is what the research from the largest firms in the world are bearing out. For example, the largest PR firm in the world, Edelman, they came out with their Good Purpose report. And Harvest Media, one of the big networks of advertising agencies, they did their Meaningful Brands report. And if you look at that fact on your right, I'm not sure if you can read it all the way at the back there, it says, most people would not care if 70% of brands disappeared. I love that fact. So, hello, 30%, you can all stay and thrive and prosper and become a billion-dollar company and get jaded and disillusioned by 28. And all of you can perish, and we don't care. Every single one of you. 70% of the people in the room, you can disappear like Borders Bookstore or Blockbuster Video, and no one cares. That's the reality of your consumers. And ask yourself, does that ring true of you personally? When you order your cappuccino or latte, you want it now. And when you download your movie, you want it now. Why is this taking so long? And where's my internet signal in the airport? There's this expectancy. And if brands don't respond to that, technology can leave them behind. The second fact, 57% of global consumers feel like they can make a brand behave more responsibly. And I love the word in there. They can make a brand. And what we're seeing in the United States right now is this rise of consumer activism, of the customer telling brands what they want. And then the third fact on the right here is 73%. I'm going to do a sniper shoot. No, I'm going for the... There we go back. See, technology always reminds us it's in control. 71% of global consumers feel that brands and consumers working together can do more to support a cause than brands working on their own. So this is a conversation going on right now with you as a startup, as a social entrepreneur, as a non-profit, as an NGO, as a massive corporation. Your customers are saying, we were there in 2008. We've been in pain ever since. We want you to be socially responsible. We want to do it with you. And by working together, we can help build a better world. Are you listening? And this has come to pass in such dramatic terms. Arab Spring revolutions, starting in Tunisia and then through Egypt and through the Gulf states, continuing today in many areas, and in Syria, obviously. And because of that, we start to see the Occupy Wall Street movement in the United States, where people here back in the United States would feel like, well, hold it, you're not listening to us either, and we're tired of this distribution of wealth. So you've had activism by citizens, and you've had activism by consumers, and now we've got cyber activism on top of that as well, where you've got companies like Anonymous and WikiLeaks saying, oh, by the way, you know that information that you buried way deep that no one could find? Yeah, we just published it. So think about that, especially if you're a millennial who's been brought up on this intuitive technology, and you wonder, Mum and Dad, why was the phone ever tied to the wall? And, a friend of mine at a conference the other day was speaking, and he showed a picture of his son, and his son was in a diaper, and the son was standing up against the television, touching the screen with his finger, trying to make the channel change. That's this marketplace, and that marketplace that is connected by this technology is saying, we want a different future, and that includes consumers as well as citizens. And here's why. Here's why they're listening. There are 4 benefits. Let's see if I can get back here. This is clearly, there we are. There are 4 clear reasons why companies are responding to these demands from consumers. Firstly, when you know who you are as a company and what you stand for, you get clarity of strategy. And here's the truth. Most big companies, and I find this in the United States through all my consulting, most big companies, all they do is broadcast their schizophrenia. We don't know who we are. Do you want us to be this? Oh, on this channel over here, we'll be that. Oh, my competitor's doing something else, so we'll do that too. Oh my God, Pinterest is now out, so let's do that as well. And after a while, customers are like, man, you're crazy. I don't know who you are, so how can I talk about you? But when you have your purpose defined, it gives you strategic clarity. Secondarily, it allows you to attract and keep and retain top talent. One of the biggest problems in the US right now is people don't want to come there anymore. People like you, the best and the brightest of Brazil, from China, India, and Brazil, you're not coming to the US like you used to. And there's this enormous competition between Google and Apple and Facebook to try and keep and attract the top talent. Especially now that the IPO's done and, all the employees can take their stocks and cash them in. There's a brain drain going on. So your ability to attract and keep top talent is a function of whether that your company is meaningful to your employees or not. Then thirdly, consumer goodwill, loyalty, and trust. We are all human beings. Shocking. We are all 100% qualified to connect emotionally around a brand, around a cause, or values that brand stands for. And so, when you say that you stand for something as a company, your customers go, I like you, because you're interested in something higher than your own bottom line. And then finally, all the PR and goodwill that comes from doing something meaningful, making a contribution. All that PR is enormously valuable to companies, especially if you're a startup. And so, what companies are listening. This is what's so amazing. The biggest brands in the world have woken up to the fact that this is the new driver of the marketplace. Yes, they care, but at the same time, they realize they have to market specific to the drivers of this marketplace. And they're looking at this research and saying, that's what our customers want. They want us to be more socially responsible. Think about it. Coca-Cola, open happiness. Pepsi, refresh everything. Starbucks, shared planet. IBM, smarter planet. Patagonia, don't buy this jacket. Why are they all doing that? They're doing that to make an emotional connection with their customers to motivate loyalty, goodwill, and ultimately sales. And yes, they care about those causes as well. And so what I want to present to you is a way to bring this new vision to life. This pillar, this third pillar of a private sector in addition to government and philanthropy. And here's how I talk about this formula for the future. The success of your business will be in direct proportion to the emotional impact on your customers. That's just advertising, right? If you don't make an emotional connection, no one's going to buy anything. At the same time, the emotional impact you have on your customers will be in direct proportion to the social impact you have on their lives. And then finally, the social impact you have on their lives will be in direct proportion to the success of your business. And this is a virtuous circle that keeps on giving. And this is the opportunity for all of us in this room. So if we suspend our disbelief for a second and ask ourselves, where could this lead us? Where could we really take our future, our planet, our country, if we put our shoulder behind what the private sector could do? That's what I'd like to show you. And it starts with an expanded definition of sustainability. A lot of people keep sustainability in the environmental box, but I don't think it should be. What you do as a business owner, as a founder, as a CEO, as a marketing person, it should be economically sustainable, because we can't continue this boom crash cycle, which in 2008 and ever since in Europe has led to such a perilous economic situation. It needs to be socially sustainable. It is simply unconscionable that so many people die unnecessarily each day due to a lack of access to food, clean water, or medicine for preventable diseases. Unconscionable. So it needs to be socially sustainable. It needs to be morally sustainable. We have to be able to live with ourselves. The responsibility for the change we want to see in the world is now ours. Because, as you've seen with the United States, government is in gridlock. Nothing's getting done. And there's only so much that philanthropy, NGOs, and non-profits can do. And then, finally, it needs to be ethically sustainable, which means we need to enforce it with the rule of the law. And what you're seeing in the United States, amongst other examples, is the rise of B corporations, B standing for beneficial. And these are companies that have said they will hold themselves accountable to a certain set of values and actually open themselves up to re-examination each year to make sure that they're keeping their promises. And then, of course, it needs to be environmentally sustainable. So when you think about sustainability, think about the entire ecosystem. Think about not just you, not just your company, not just your category, not just your industry, not just your city, not just your country, but think about the entire ecosystem, because we all live in a mutually dependent, intimately connected global community now, as we discovered the hard way in 2008. And so, what do we do if we want to take a leadership role and have this expanded definition of sustainability? We have to embrace 7 core values. I just touched on the first one, sustainability. Fairness of reward. One of the most acute pain points in the United States is the disparity between the pay of a CEO and the average employee, which is up to 800 times as compared to the most in Europe, which is around 300 times the pay of the average employee is what a CEO gets. Fiscal responsibility. You need to be responsible for the impact of your company on the environment, what they call negative externalities. And you need to, talk about that with shareholders and take responsibility for mistakes. An obvious one, being the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico with BP. And they tried to damage control it by taking full-page newspaper ads saying everything's okay. And so everybody said they would redesign the BP logo, and they got 50,000 logos redesigned as evil. That's the customer base now. You need to be accountable as brands in terms of consumer trust to earn goodwill. And for that, you need to be transparent. That's why charities like Charity Water are using Google Maps and GPS technology so you can actually look at the well that's being dug with the money that you've given. Then you need to be purposeful, which we're talking about here. You need to engage. And what I mean by that is you need to shift from this transactional, short-term approach to marketing and invest in deeper relationships with your customers. And we're starting to see such incredible examples. In Northern Europe, there are now companies that reward their executives on the basis of the reduction in the carbon footprint of the company. Think about that. The reason things aren't changing in the United States is because corporate executives still get paid or get stock options on the basis of whether they hit analyst projections for the next quarter. And so there's no incentive for them to change because all they want to do is hit the number so they can get their stock, which vests in 5 years. But in Europe, you're starting to see this remuneration change. And the reward is now being, given on a new basis. And then global citizenry. We are all intimately connected, ecologically, economically. And if we destroy the oceans, if we create the ranks of the poor to such an extent that societies collapse, then it's going to be our own fault. And so we need to embrace our role as global citizens. So what does that look like? Is that really possible? Well, it is. And there's 3 parts to this. And I lay this out in We First, the book. The first is this partnership between brands and consumers. And we see this all around us in our lives right now. Brands will be more socially responsible in exchange for customers' goodwill, loyalty, and profits. But it's not easy. As Mauro was saying, it's very hard to integrate social media with inside your own company, with your employees. And it's equally hard to do it at scale with your customers. Let me ask you a question. Who here's got a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, or wife? Boyfriend, girlfriend, husband or wife, significant other? Okay. Who here has more than one lover? Come on, this is Florianopolis in Brazil. Come on, and if you're here with your boyfriend or girlfriend, put your hand down, please. Okay, who here has more than 10 The gentleman down the front with the cane raised his hand. Who here's got more than 10 lovers? 10 lovers. Oh, the one brave woman in the center. In the center, 4th row, 3 back. That's what it's like to try and deal with your customers at scale. You have to scale intimacy. Why? Because they're using social media to tell you everything about them. Where they went on holiday, what music they're listening to, what they like to buy, what color shoes they like. And if they're telling you that, and you talk to them in a way that shows you weren't listening to what they say, then they assume you're not listening, you're not interested, and they'll go somewhere else. So how do you scale this intimacy? It's a challenge with employees, and it's a challenge with customers. But let's look at a couple of examples. If we want to reach out, for example, to mothers, Procter & Gamble, one of the biggest companies in the world, they've got their Pampers brand, diapers. I'm a dad, I remember getting diapers very well. And can I tell you a true story? One day I was... I've never told this story in a speech before and probably shouldn't for good reason. But I was actually living in Portland, Oregon, working at Wieden & Kennedy on Nike. And I had my daughter, who was like 3 years old. I was walking down the street. You know the proud dad who just wants to show everyone what a great dad they are? And they kind of are hyperactive? That was me. And I said to my wife, I think my daughter had, gone to the bathroom in the diaper. We need to change her. And I checked. She was fine. Put her back on my shoulders, walking around. I'm like, seriously, something is really, really wrong here. We checked her again. She turns around and looks at me, and the diaper had leaked all around the back here. So I had a ring of poop around the back of my neck. And I'm like, what is that smell? True story. Anyway, diapers. So my daughter will be mortified if she sees this in 5 years. Like, Dad. Anyway, what Pampers does is whenever you buy a packet of diapers, It funds a tetanus vaccination for a mother or newborn child in the developing world. And in the last 4 years, they've donated over 31 million vaccinations and saved over an estimated 100,000 lives. Think about that, by selling diapers. Now, the mothers in the room, does that mean something to you to know that you're buying diapers that you need anyway, but you're also saving the life of a mother or newborn in the developing world? That's how you connect with people on an emotional level around something as everyday as diapers. So let's take a harder example. Pizza. Pizza with cheese. Pizza with triple cheese. Pizza with cheese in the crust. Pizza Hut. What does pizza do with social media? Pizza Hut went and did a deal with the game maker Zynga. They're the ones that make all those games like Farmville and Frontierville on the Facebook platform. Who here plays social games? Who here plays social games? When I spoke today, there was far less honest people. The number one demographic for people who play social games is women 34 to 50. So that's what's going on during the day. But what Pizza Hut did was when you buy a pizza, there's barcodes on the top of the box. And when you scan those barcodes, it gives you access to virtual goods that you can buy for 99 cents and put in your games like Farmville, Cityville, Empires and Allies. And 100% of the proceeds from those virtual goods went to the World Food Program. So they make food and they support the World Food Program. That is 2 examples of many out there where there's this exchange going on between brands and consumers. Brands are more socially responsible. Consumers reward them with their goodwill, loyalty, and profits. The second piece of the puzzle is contributory consumption. Now, this is not a new concept. It's not my concept in the sense that it builds on the very important work done by 1% for the Planet, which is an organization that got member companies to take 1% of their pre-tax profits and give it to the environment. And also Product Red, which was, do you remember when you could buy an Apple product and it was a red color, like the U2 iPod, and a certain amount of the proceeds would go to HIV and AIDS in Africa? Well, contributory consumption is building on that idea. Very simply, it's imagine a small percentage of the sale of any product or service you buy goes towards a cause that's in alignment with the core values of the brand. So not cause washing, not greenwashing, not KFC doing fundraising for the Susan Komen Breast Cancer Foundation, but something that reinforces the core values of the for-profit narrative that the company's promoting. That's when you start to see a difference. And then instead of just making it retail in store, let's take it across all 5 categories. Retail. Billions of credit card transactions every day. All the online sales. All the mobile sales. And Google tells us this year, in January, put out a report saying this is the first time ever people are surfing the web more on their smartphones than on PCs. And then finally, virtual goods. In the US, I haven't seen the latest figures, but in the US, Americans spent $2 billion in 2010 on virtual goods, on little things that don't exist to go in non-existent farms. And you wonder why the US economy is in trouble. And it's estimated to reach $6 billion by 2014. And let's be realistic for a second. Let's just say 95% of the private sector around the world says, screw you, pardon the French. We're going to look after our shareholders. We're going to look after our profit. We're not going to do it. Only 5% say yes. And that 5% say, I'm sorry, we get the idea, but we're not going to take a huge risk. We're going to give you 1 cent on the dollar. Just 1 cent, 1%. If you had 5% of the global private sector give 1 cent on the dollar, you would absolutely dwarf the $14 billion raised by corporate foundations every year in a systemic and sustainable way. And we would constantly be servicing the engine of capitalism by building contribution into consumption rather than running it into the ground and trying to repair it later on. So the idea of contributory consumption is to end this false separation between living and giving and build contribution into consumption so that we can actually maintain the well-being of society on which our businesses depend and also the well-being of our own lives. So let's look at a couple of examples. On the slide before, we had Tom's. One of the more well-known examples, you buy a pair of shoes or eyeglasses and a person in the developing world gets the equivalent. Or you've got a smaller t-shirt company, Sevenly, and what they do is they crowdsource every month what the community wants them to support. So what do you want us to support this month? And that's a wonderful excuse for them to engage their community and also make a contribution. Or, how do we use social gaming? Well, in Parallel Kingdom, you actually buy virtual food, and that funds real food in the real world. We talked about the World Food Program, where virtual goods feeds children in Farmville. You buy virtual goods in the game in the middle, and you get clean water. And on the right there, you've got a fitness game where the more you exercise, the more donations are generated for clean water in the developing world. So it can be used in so many different ways, whether it's through games or apps or retail purchases or credit card purchases. I mean, when you buy a URL, you try and buy a link on GoDaddy in the United States, it says, do you want to round up that dollar purchase and give the balance to charity? It's everywhere. And then the third piece of the puzzle is something I call the Global Brand Initiative. And it's a simple idea. A coalition of for-profit companies that bring their best skills and resources to bear on our greatest social crises. So think about this. Think about Nike, HP, IBM, Google, and Nestle and Unilever wanting to address clean water. And not just doing it through contributory consumption, where they take a percentage of the money that they earn on the dollar and give it to a charity, but they bring technology, training, infrastructure, marketing, distribution. Maybe they take their executives and go and train NGOs and other people out there in the field. Maybe they use their IP, their intellectual property, and their research teams to solve a problem. Maybe they reach out to their audience, their customer community, and ask them to solve it together, like HP does with its social innovation platform. So imagine the for-profit sector brought not just contributory consumption, but all these various skill sets to bear on social crises, just like you are all in this room. And then, if we took those 3 examples, what would that look like? Let's find a concrete example. And arguably Nike is one of the best marketers in the world. And I'll tell you, I had the privilege of working on their business as a writer for 4.5 years. And I'll tell you, yes, they are smart, but what they do is they risk better than anybody else. They just risk better. Like you are, as entrepreneurs in this room, mildly terrified every day, but you're taking the risk anyway. And so what does that look like? From a strategic point of view, Nike has said, this headline on this ad is, our products are a load of rubbish because that t-shirt is made from recycled PET bottles. Or sharing an idea is an idea. And then from a product point of view, they talk about all the environmental friendliness of their various products. And then from a IP point of view or intellectual property point of view, what they do is they open up their secrets. It's like Coca-Cola opening up their secret formula. They've opened up their IP through the environmental design tool and said, this is how we reduce the carbon footprint of our supply chain to all our competitors, so you can do the same, so we can address climate change together. Or they launched the Nike Green Exchange, where they shared with their competitors the formulas for the rubbers and glues that they use in their shoes. Why did they do that? When you're in a global community, when we're all in this together, how do you stake out a leadership position? How do you lead when we're a team? All of us, our competitors. You know what you do? You demonstrate a commitment to something higher than your own self-interest. So Nike has basically said, we're going to take responsibility for the well-being of the global community and take that leadership role on behalf of our industry. Strategically very smart and specific and peculiar to the world we now find ourselves in. And then imagine we take all these 3 pieces, the partnership between brands and consumers, contributory consumption, the Global Brand Initiative, and we start to work together. Now, Patagonia has given us a taste of what this Global Brand Initiative might look like. They created the Sustainable Apparel Coalition that was launched in July last year in the United States. And they said, climate change is going to hurt our businesses, and it's going to hurt all your lives. So we want to hold the entire footwear and apparel industry, we want to hold them accountable to the same sustainability index. And now they've signed up over 30% of the global industry, including competitors Nike, Adidas, Puma, including people like Walmart. And that, when you have the big brands, the smart brands doing that, it sets an example for all the mid-sized companies and smaller companies below them. All of this is unimaginable 5 years ago. If you told me as an advertising guy working in London 5 years ago that companies were going to give away their IP and work together so they can address social issues to earn goodwill from their customers who are going to tell them what to do, I would have said, you're crazy. But that's the impact of social media because it's given citizens and customers a voice. And so what happens if we take those three pieces and we say the private sector is now a pillar of social change, and it's going to work with NGOs, and philanthropy, and it's also going to work with government because the NGOs are the ones who know what it's really like on the ground. And the government can help push through this from a regulatory point of view. What if we got those three pillars working together? And then what if we took those three pillars and they addressed the 8 major crises out there as defined by the Millennium Development Goals: hunger, child mortality, women's rights, disease? What would be possible? Just think about it for a second. What would be possible if that became the mission for the entire private sector? And it's begun piecemeal all around us, as you see in these examples and hundreds more, and your presence here in this room. And so I want you to think about revolution in a new way. You want to revolutionize your industry. You want to revolutionize technology. You want to revolutionize the world. Well, the evolution of revolution is contribution. And it's counterintuitive, but it is absolutely specific to the connected global community we now live in. And I want to share something with you, which is a short little animated film which lays out this vision for you. Now, it was written in English and it's poetry, so I'm not sure how the Portuguese translation will read. So forgive me, but we're going to play a very short video that lays out this vision for you, and I hope the subtitles translate effectively.
First, me. Then you. Then me again. Then you two. Then me. One more time. Then everyone else in line. And I'm sure they'll be just fine as long as me gets mine. 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 Mine! Capitalism has been acting a bit childish. Unwilling to let go of its me. That security blanket of its youth that's been keeping it from growing into its W. And understanding that me in reverse is M. And M upside down is W. And W on its right side is E. So all this me first mentality needs is to be turned upside down and placed on its right side to see that we is the new me. And capitalism is no longer just growing. It's finally growing up. How valuable a company will be to me depends less on how well they be to C or B to B, and more on how well they be to we, the new stars of the show. Mindful and socially responsible customers, from moms to millennials, will light up the red carpet at every brand premiere. And their response when fashion correspondents ask, "What do we wear?" will be, "I'm just rocking a t-shirt that reads, I changed the world by buying a t-shirt made of conscious consumption that contributed to the relief of 6,000 disaster victims, the full tummies of 17 million hungry kids, and 4 billion liters of clean water, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt." And I'm good with that because I know what I'm wearing looks good, because I feel good in what I'm wearing, like a CSR superhero in a brand new costume. Please excuse me while I sew this W on my cape, because the new Dark Knight is we, and a global brand initiative is the new Justice League. Brands of all sizes, combining forces and expertise that agree to use their powers for the global good of we, to fight for sustainable capitalism, for corporate and consumer activism, for fan action over acquisition, for blind profits, new proactive vision, contributory consumption. A WeCommerce solution that proves the evolution of revolution is contribution, turning every retail transaction into a WeTail brand action. From brick and mortar fashion to mobile apps and virtual rations, consumers and brands are forming a new social media. And the irony is, technology is actually completing us, teaching us how to be human again, to remember why it is we make money in the first place. It was never supposed to be profit for profit's sake. Corporations are not just responsible for every shareholder, but every stakeholder, every negative externality. This entire world will be our beneficiary or our casualty, because the future of giving can only be sustained by the presence of all three pillars of change, where government and philanthropy meet the GBI. So we must remember our ties to everyone that's alive, till we join ourselves to our global social community, till we embrace self-interest, till we purpose profit, and till we define the way we speak capitalism, till we sound like a world of rabbit hunters searching for the rascally rabbits of irresponsible habits and trying to rehabilitate those me-first addicts who cringe at the new vocabulary of we first, and foremost us, first of all together. In the first place, we first, in the race to first base, first impressions of we at first sight for sore. Eyes must be bigger than my self-interest that doesn't know the first thing about selfish self-serving everyone at the table, because as long as we are first come, we'll always be first, served best as an ensemble, casting the first stone at apathy that we carry out, feet first in line to embrace this opportunity knocking and open the door like ladies first, and learn from before like elders first, and preserve what's in store for children first. Right of refusal to follow anything less than people who allow nothing less than progress, that creates nothing less than profit, that has nothing less than purpose, that accepts nothing less than a world of conscious corporations, contributory consumers, and a come-of-age capitalism that finally puts we first.
Thank you. We, all of us in this room, have a choice of 4 different futures that we talked about in the beginning. Which one turns out to be the life we live depends on you. It's a challenge to you personally, to you as a company, to you as an industry, to you as a sector, to Florianopolis as a city, and to Brazil as a country, especially with the eyes of the world looking at you with the 3 carnivales, the World Cup, and the Olympics ahead of you. This next 5 years is your greatest opportunity to shine. And if you do that, you won't just build a better world. You'll give yourself the gift of personal fulfillment that is far more rewarding than anything else you could do. Thank you so much.